Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and welcome to another one of our real estate investing videos. Today we're talking about the 70% rule when analyzing house flips. I have done 211 house flips up to this point, and that's 211 houses that we bought, rehabbed, and sold. And we currently have about 10 house flips we're working on as well to add to that number. But over the years, we've learned how to analyze flips, how to look at the numbers, how to decide if it's a good deal or not, and how much to offer on house flips as well. Now, along with that analyzation and being in the industry, I also have my blog, YouTube, social media, where we talk to a lot of other investors who talk about how they value house flips as well. And one of the really big reoccurring rules you will see is the 70% rule, and we'll go through this real quick. And a lot of people use the 70% rule to analyze house flips. So we're going to talk about that rule, what it is, how it works, give some real life examples of it, and tell you how I feel about the rule. And then I'll show you another way to analyze house flips as well. Now, of course, check out investformore.com. That's my blog with hundreds of free articles, a free book, all kinds of great stuff on there. We have tons of other videos here on YouTube. You look at our real estate advice playlist. You can see all our actual flips we're doing on the before and after playlist as well. And we have 9 books on Amazon if you want even more in-depth information. So, real quick, we'll start with how does the 70% rule work? It's actually really simple. So, we're saying a house is worth $200,000 after you fix it up. And often you hear people say ARV, and I like to call that after repaired value, after remodeled value. That's the value it's worth once it's repaired, you put it on the market and you sell it. So this house is worth $200,000. Now the 70% rule says you multiply the ARV times 70% or 0.7. If you do that, you get $140,000. Now, you're not done yet. Then the rule states you subtract whatever repairs are needed. So we're assuming this house needs $30,000 in repairs. In today's market, that means it's a pretty cosmetic flip because things are so expensive to repair. So $200,000 times 70% minus repairs gives you the price that you should pay for this house flip to make it a good flip, which is $110,000. So according to the 70% rule, that's what you pay for this house, and all you need to know is the repair cost and the ARV cost. So we'll talk about this a lot more in depth here and show you some examples of houses we flipped and if it works or doesn't work. But if you really want a calculator for this to figure it out, I have one on my site on investformore.com. And we have a really long article as well that goes into everything we're going to say here too that I'll link to below. But let's look at why this works sometimes and why it doesn't work very well other times. All right, first we're going to look at a property we sold a couple of months ago. This is a house that we thought would be worth $285,000 when we were buying it. I have a full complete before and after video on this as well. We'll link to below. It shows all the numbers, everything we spent, goes through the whole remodel process before and after as well. Now, according to the 70% rule, you multiply 285 by 70%, you should pay $199,500 minus repairs. This was a super easy one. We spent about $20,000 on repairs. So 70% rule says we should have bought it for $179,500 for it to be a good flip. What did we pay for it? We paid $200,000 for it. It's actually one of our best flips we've done in a while. Now, we got lucky because the market went up, but it still would have been a really good flip even if the market hadn't gone up, and we'll show you here why. So what ended up happening with this property? Did we lose money because we didn't follow the 70% rule? Well, let's look at the numbers. This is assuming it would sell for $285,000. It didn't though. Our repairs ended up being $22,000, so a little more than we expected, and we always account for that. We always know there'll be more than we think there'll be. The selling costs were $11,890. Again, I go over these in detail in that other video, but that's paying a real estate agent, closing costs, title costs, some other fees that are in there. Our financing costs were $11,000. We used private money to finance this property. We sold it very quickly, just in a few months, so that helped the profit numbers. And our carrying costs, we pay for homeowners insurance, property taxes, utilities, maintenance while we own the home. That's what those were as well. So if you take our $285,000 sales price and subtract all of our costs, we come up with a $237,910 figure. That means the difference between that and what we paid for it as our profit, we would have made almost $38,000 with a very small investment, because this is 100% financing. We paid the repairs, we paid some financing costs, some carrying costs. Selling costs come out of your proceeds, you don't pay those up front. So we had about $35,000, $36,000 of money we invested into this property over a few months, and we made $38,000 on it. That sounds like a pretty good flip to me. That's why I don't like the 70% rule, because it can eliminate some really good deals. Now, what actually happened, because the market improved, we sold it for $313,000. We made close to $60,000 something, I forgot exactly how much it was, dollars on this flip. And the 70% rule said we never should have bought it. So even if the market didn't go up, even if the market went down some, we still would have made money. So it would have been a great flip for the amount of time and money we put into it. Okay, we're gonna look at another example. This is a made up example because we have a very low sales price which don't exist in our market in Colorado. Long time ago they did. So the ARV is 100,000. So we take that ARV, multiply it by 70,000. We have 30,000 in repairs. So ARV times 70% minus repairs. This formula, the 70% rule, says we should pay $40,000 for this flip to make it a good deal. So is that a good deal? All right, so let's look at what the real numbers might be. And we're kind of mirroring it after that other deal. It's a really quick, pretty easy flip. We had our repairs a little higher, but 100,000 ARV, we're paying 30,000 for repairs. Your selling costs for 5,000 because they're lower because you have a lower sales price, but your other title fees and other stuff, it's not all relative. You'll still have probably, it won't be exactly a third of what that other ARV was. It'd be a little more. Financing costs, carrying costs, again, your carrying costs won't be exactly a third because you'll still have utilities, other costs that will still be a fair amount. So what you end up with is 59,500 is kind of the difference of your ARV minus all of these costs. So if you're paying $40,000 for this flip, that means you're gonna make 19,500, assuming everything goes right. So the other one, right, it was telling us we should buy a much lower price than what we ended up doing. It still ended up being a really good deal. This one is telling us that if we pay 40,000, we're only gonna make 19,500. And yes, all these are lower. You might have a little bit less exposure, but we're still financing it. We still have these other costs. You still have risks involved in selling this property. And in this price point, it might be tougher to sell. You know, there's a lot of different variables here. That's not a very big number to make based on the work and risk you have involved in this property. So you have to decide, is that worth it? You know, the other one told us not to buy it. This one's telling us we should buy it when maybe we shouldn't. That's why I don't like the 70% rule. And there's some other reasons why I don't like this rule, while a lot of other people just blindly accept it as that's what you have to pay. So the only thing the 70% rule really needs as inputs is the ARV and the repairs. That's it. So why does that lead to errors and problems? All of these are different on every single deal, and they are not accounted for in that rule. Selling costs are different for everyone. I'm a real estate agent. I can list the home myself. I also make a commission when I buy a house sometimes from the MLS. This is so much different for me as a licensed agent versus someone else who's not. And the 70% rule does not account for it. Carrying costs are different for everybody. Depends on where you live, if it's winter, if it's summer, if there's lawn maintenance, if there's snow removal, what the property taxes are, what the insurance rates are, vary greatly everywhere you go. 70% rule doesn't account for it, doesn't account for it. Financing costs. You could pay cash for a flip. You could use a bank loan at 5%. You could use hard money at 10%. You could use private money at 15%. You could do 70% down. You could do 20% down. You could do 0 down, right? 70% rule does not account for it. Time to sell. The longer it takes you to sell a house, the more your carrying costs are, the more your financing costs are, sometimes the more your selling costs are. The 70% rule does not account for that. And then the difficulty of the repairs, right? If you have a $100,000 repair, there's a good chance it's going to have a lot of problems, take a really long time. It's much, much, much more risky than a lower priced repair, a $30,000 repair. The 70% rule does not account for the difficulty of the repairs, the time it takes, and the problems that can arise with those repairs. So the 70% rule can make really good flips that are easy and simple, look like bad deals you shouldn't do, and it can make really horrible flips that will take a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of effort, and have massive amounts of risk, look like really good deals. So that is why I do not like the 70% rule. So what do I do instead? We'll show you here really quick. The first thing you can do is make your own rule, right? You figure out what costs are typically in your area. If you're a real estate agent, what your selling costs are, what your carrying costs are, what your financing costs are, you get all those together, you look at your typical deals, and you look and say, hey, historically, this is about what I've paid and made money. So you can make your own rule that could be 65, 70, 75, 80, who knows where it is. It depends on so many different factors. And you can kind of have your own rule that gives you an idea if a flip is worth doing. However, like we saw in the examples before, the price points can make these rules not work right, even for one person in one market. You know, a $200,000 ARV might not work with a certain rule if it's 75%, where an $800,000 ARV, it might work at 80%. It just depends on the repairs, the ease, the market, so many different things. So you can make your own rule, but even then, I don't think that's the best way to do it. This is how I figure out if a flip is worth doing or not. And it's kind of old school, nothing fancy. I take the ARV, what I think it's worth. I have a video on that too. That can be one of the toughest parts of flipping, is knowing what the house will be worth when you're done. So make sure you know that. We can't go over that in this video. My repairs, again, I have a video on that too. That can be a lot of work and take a lot of time to figure out what the repairs might be. You're estimating the repairs and you're always overestimating what you think they will be, because they'll always be more than you think. Your financing costs, you're estimating what your financing costs are based on how long you're going to hold the property. Lots of math involved, but you need to know math if you're doing flips. Again, you kind of overestimate what it might be. You don't assume you're going to sell this house in 2 months and everything's going to go perfect. You assume it takes 6 months or 8 months, and then you even assume what happens if it doesn't go perfect, what those costs will be then. Carrying costs, same thing we just talked about. Financing costs, you assume will take you longer than you think it will. Selling costs, how much does it cost you to sell the property at this? Paying agents, paying title costs, closing fees, all of that. And you take these numbers, right, and you kind of subtract them from your ARV, sort of like what we did before, but we're actually writing out the numbers because they're all going to be so different, even on each deal. And we come up to, these add up to $55,000. $145,000 is your break-even point. Now, what you probably want to do from here is add on another $5,000 or $10,000 for contingencies for, hey, we run into repairs we don't know about, it takes us longer than we think. It almost always costs more than you think it's going to cost, no matter how conservative you are with these numbers. So then you're like, okay, we're going to say our break-even is $140,000, right? What profit do you need to make this worthwhile? You're financing it, so you're not using a ton of your own cash, but you have some risk involved. It's going to take some time. We're using contractors to do all our work. So we're not spending all our time doing the work, but you're spending time managing them, doing all this. And then what if things go down a little bit? What's this worth it to you? For me, I always like to say, I've got to make $30,000 on every deal. It doesn't really matter how cheap the property is. My profit margin has to be $30,000 or it's just not worth it for me. And so then we have $110,000 as the price we're willing to pay for the property. Now, a little thing you can throw in there, say, oh, this is listed on the MLS. Well, since I'm an agent, I'm going to make 3% commission when I buy it. So if I pay $110,000, that's over $3,000 I'm going to get back. Well, I could actually pay $113,000 then and still make the same amount of money. What's funny about this, and I didn't mean to do that in the beginning of this, but I realized it while I was writing it out, the 70% rule, we'll erase this right here, 200 times 0.7 equals 140 minus 30,000 in repairs is 110,000. It's the same. So in this particular example, the 70% rule worked. And it can work, just not all the time. That's why I don't like a rule. I don't want to use a rule that doesn't work all the time, because that doesn't help me out. If sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I want a rule that works all the time, every time, and that's why I don't like rules. I like to write them out. I like to be specific for each scenario and get all the costs down, because general rules almost never work. Rental property rules, flipping rules, agent rules, like I just don't like rules. I like to look at each individual scenario together. So yes, it can work, but many times it will make you buy deals that aren't good deals and pass up deals that are good deals. All right, thank you guys for watching. I hope you appreciate these videos. Like I said, I have a very long article that goes over all of this on investformore.com as well. We'll link to that below. Lots of other resources in our real estate advice playlist. Videos like this that go over the numbers, how to do it, our complete before and after flip playlist also has specific case studies using properties we have bought and sold that go over all these actual numbers and what they were, and show you the before and after videos for the work that we did on them too. And on Amazon, we have 9 books, including Fix and Flip Your Way to Financial Freedom, which is my house flipping book that goes over all of these techniques too. All right, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy it. Love the likes, love the comments, love the shares. Keep those coming, and we'll be back with much more soon.